A very good morning. In this session, we would be discussing some of the major things that have been discussed in Down to Earth edition 1st to 15th of May. So the first is the implementation of 10 green projects. Now the Odisha school talks about children being provided with practical exposure for sustainable living and resource conservation. And there were practical sessions which have been demonstrated in the various schools in Odisha, focusing on the green projects and the innovative ideas. So for example, one mentioned a seesaw pump being installed in a playground where children actually play, and this energy is being utilized to draw groundwater. Similarly, water harvesting systems have been built. Projects related to wooden mats, split bamboo, dried grass have been built. There have been hydroponic gardens for soilless farming, solar panels for clean energy, smart garbage bins with RFID technology to detect the type of waste and segregate or send alert when the capacity is on the brim. So all these projects are under the 10 green projects that have been mentioned and have been bringing hands-on experience for the students in Odisha. So this has been one of the recommendable tasks which has been done. Also, the report talked about the school receiving Green School Award for the kind of facilities and the green initiatives that are being provided. The next is, in India, the food demand has been rising. Now this has been under the policy paper being published by the National Institute for Agricultural Economics and Policy Research under ICAR, and it says that because of the land holdings and the land size shrinking and the rising food demand, there is a constant pressure on the agricultural sector, and by 2047 the India's food demand is expected to be more than double as is expected at the present level. So to meet this, there would be a decline that would be projected, and this decline is not less. It's around nearly 180 million hectares, which is a very significant figure for the farmland demand, right? So greater attention is needed for fruits, vegetables, pulses and oil seeds. A gradual transition would be required to have future food crops that could be grown in. Also, we would need to increase the growth of vegetables and pulses significantly. The next is thorium reactor. Now China has recently introduced the idea of clean energy with thorium as one of the sectors, and a 2 megawatt experimental reactor was set up in Gobi Desert, which talked about the molten salt being used as a coolant as well as a carrier, with thorium as one of the major fuels. Now thorium is considered as a clean energy because it generates more energy as compared to uranium and is less radioactive. Also, the meltdown risks which are associated with thorium are significantly less, and thorium cannot generate weapon grade products, so again it is relatively safer. Now thorium reactor can reduce the wastage of plutonium because this would be a safer fuel, because of which this would be a safer fuel, and this initiative would go a long way in developing the impacts of nuclear power projects in India as well. The next is Vietnam recently reported the case of bird flu. Now this case of bird flu is another virus which has been affecting not only the respiratory system but also the central nervous system. Now this case was seen in an 8-year-old girl which showed the sign of encephalitis. Now this girl initially experienced fever, headache, vomiting, and later drowsiness and confusion, and this was typically correlated to the H5N1 trace of the avian flu. Now similar cases were seen back in 2004 where siblings developed neurological symptoms and respiratory issues, and it ultimately turned fatal. The next is we are also trying to minimize the human and wildlife conflict. This has been remarkably seen recently near the areas of Jim Corbett National Park, where the forest department is now replacing teak and eucalyptus with native trees and fruit bearing species. Now when this happens, there has been a constant conflict with the wildlife and human activities. Now the people there are able to cultivate nearly 500 kg of wheat which was lost because of the failures there. Now these kind of of activities have been affecting because the herbivorous animals, specifically cheetal, sambar, nilgai elephants, have been raiding the crop areas that have been created for subsistence agriculture in the nearby areas of the forest land. Now there were similar cases which have been seen between 73 to 93, and these trees have harvested cyclically with nearly 400 hectares which are cut annually. And Uttarakhand reports that the teak coverage is around 0.1%, 0.9%, eucalyptus around 0.7%, and despite these are having commercial values, they are negatively impacting the biodiversity and causing harm to the native species. Now this was one of the case that has been raised, and then there were straying wildlife in the areas which have been affecting the agricultural area, damaging the agricultural and the plantation regions. Specifically the elephant corridors have been one of the worst affected one. Now Uttar Pradesh is one of the largest groundwater consumers in India, and we are talking about a state being highly dependent on water intensive crops, and therefore with this there have been unregulated bore wells, there have been weaker policy enforcement which are now turning into water crisis in the regions of Uttar Pradesh. The water table has gone down very shallow. Farmers are now relying only on the rain or the canal for irrigation. The bore wells have reached nearly 76 to 80 meters in certain areas, which has depleted significantly the groundwater reservoirs in the major areas in Uttar Pradesh, specifically in the western Uttar Pradesh, where agriculture is one of the mainstay of the economy. Now cropping shift is another idea that has been suggested in the regions of Uttar Pradesh, where we are being talked about shifting from water intensive crops to coarse grains like millets, maize, introduction of bore wells, and making sure that the intensive crops, the water intensive crops, are less grown. So this shift could again be one of the ways through which the water shortage could be curbed in the area. However, there has been little success, but there has been high reliance on groundwater. As you can see, the western areas are the ones which are highly prone to groundwater extraction, obviously because of the higher agricultural belt in this area and better irrigation facilities. Now the next is the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, which talks about the groundwater crisis at the micro irrigation level. Now here what we want to understand is the idea should be to apply water directly to the crop roots. This would increase the yield, reduce the amount of water being utilized, reduce the amount of fertilizer and labor, and also for the marginal farmers and small farmers, 55% financial assistance is available under this project. There have been micro irrigation projects which have been adopted by Punjab universities and others, which have been really successful. The next is as we talked about diseases, right? The contact with the avian flu or the H5N1 that we discussed. Another issue is that human settlements has led to elephant contracting diseases which are usually not associated to them. So a tuskless male elephant in Coimbatore area was found at around 6,000 kg, which is unusually more than the normal range of this age from 4,000 to 500 to 5,000. Now since it had been raiding the cropping area, this elephant has been relocated multiple times before it was sent to the village Valparai. Now these elephants tend to become obese because they have a sedentary lifestyle. They feed on rich nutrient for a shorter period and then rest, which lead to further fat accumulation, and they have been affecting the regions. Now there have been TB in wild animals, the tuberculosis diseases, and this was first confirmed in 2017, and later on elephants contracted TB through droplets which are infected from human beings. There have been transmission of tuberculosis in the wild population where they are sharing the common grazing areas and there are tourist safaris. So there are definite risks. Now these risks have been revealed in the form of elephant theotropic herpes virus, which is a hemorrhagic disease which is 85% fatal. Now this data has been seen where nearly 12 wild elephants actually died between 2009 to 2021. The disease is more common if the elephants are captivated, specifically affecting younger elephants younger than 15 years, and is transmitted where the water and the food resources are shared. There are sporadic cases, however, which are present in Karnataka, Assam and Chhattisgarh, but still this could be wide effect and eventually lead to huge impact on the productivity, fertility and population of elephants in long run. So how elephants get contracted with human-borne diseases is again a greater risk of greater concern, right? Then is the close contact with human-dominated areas where there are either garbage dumps or there are places which are closely jam-packed where infectious diseases could be seen. Since human consume salt, elephants get accustomed to the food found in the waste, and this talks about the shift in the behavior. So elephants are vulnerable to more of contagious diseases through their environment because they take or through the environment, mainly through the trunk, right? So through the nasal passage these inhalations go in, and they are highly susceptible to the areas where human settlements are seen. The next is the proxy areas. Now biotechnology company has talked about dire wolf, which was near to extinction, and this has been recreated by using advanced genetic editing and cloning. And around 2.6 million years ago, when the glaciers was covered, there was a canine which was seen, which was dire wolf, and this species coexisted with the megafauna, the mammoths and the sloths, the saber-toothed tiger that used to exist at that time. And with this study in United States, we are now able to have advanced genetic editing, recloning techniques through which the animals which have gone extinct could be brought back. Now this dire wolf is adapted to the physical traits, specifically in Alaska, in the tropical wetlands as well. And as the earth moved towards warmer climates, the climate is stabilized, the population decline, and the extinction has been nearly 13,000 to 10,000 years ago. Now they have been reported to life again in 2014 using the advanced genetic editing systems by the Colossal Biosciences company in US, and they are announcing the birth of the first resurrected dire wolf, introducing the 6-month-old pups Remus and Romulus, and a 2-month-old female called as Khaleesi. So these are some of the breakthrough innovations, we could say. Now Colossal, let's talk about the company who has been doing it. So it's a biotechnology company which used the CRISP genetic sequence and the DNA of the grey wolf, which used to resemble the dire wolf. 99% has been used. Now the process involved recovering the ancient dire wolf DNA from the fossils. There were 20 genetic edits which were made, the cloning was done, and then identical pups were created, the 3 pups that we talked about. Now this company talks about the de-extinction. Now there are definite ethical concerns if this comes true. What animals can come back on the earth and what could be the future scenario, right? So this project, which has been described by Colossal, talks about CRISP gene editing, gene sequencing, creating proxies of extinct animals. This could include mammoths, and why not dinosaurs then? So the company talks about using Asian elephant, which have 98% similarity with mammoths, to bring back mammoths into life, right? So they are talking about that these mammoths could reduce the global warming by grazing away the snow, and this would allow colder air to reach the soil and prevent the snow from quick melting. So this is how this has been talked about, that these mammoths, if they were brought to life again, they would actually reduce the impact of global warming. And this is an attempt which is not only restricted to animals, but yes, we have also seen the attempt with dodo bird, which is native bird to Mauritius, went extinct during the deforestation, where the Dutchess sites were being built, the nests were being destructed in the region, and dodo genome has been preserved, specifically the skull, and it has been identified that the closest resemblance to dodo genome is through the Nicobar pigeon. So Nicobar pigeon could be used as one of the ways to actually regenerate the dodo. So there have been similar projects which have been ongoing with other species as well. Now this is just one company. There is another team through Novak which has been working. The Quagga project in South Africa talks about the zebra population which resembles the quagga, which is a subspecies which went extinct in 19th century. And then there are similar findings with Netherlands, Taurus, rewilding Europe, where there have been selective breeding of species, specifically the orcots, which is the ancestor of modern cattle. Now de-extinction could go a long way, and this would open a new chapter in the history to understand and see the implications. But the conservation behavior again comes to life when we are talking about the scientific validity of the project, the technological expertise that has been talked about. And this company has talked about functional de-extinction as creating organisms which resemble the extinct species by restoring their core genes or enhancing their capabilities. So definitely the Taurus program is again claiming to bring back orcos which looks very similar to the cattle population and have gone de-extinct. The next one is that with the de-extinction there have been serious concerns on the animal welfare, because with this method the species that you are bringing in, how would they adjust with the other species on earth? And also the dolly which was cloned as one of the sheep was actually suffering from health problems and died at a younger age. There were birth complications, surrogate rejection which was seen. So there are various questions which again relate to it. The next is the ecosystem. So extinction of thylacine was driven by human actions, and this was particularly hunting, due to which it was believed that this ship was facing the threat. Now they are supposed to work with the dire wolf and the de-extinction technology, talking about the various perspectives that could be brought in, and the opinions for various professors vary. For example, the Ethics Institute of Northeastern University have argued that this does not address the ecological or social issues. So there have been ethical justifications which have been revolving around these species. Also there has been a pursuit to understand how people can go about. There has been a group of team of paleontologists who have been working to bring back the DNA and the fossil samples of these species. The conservation efforts have been long in fact, and there have been evaluation of nearly 67,000 species in the last 40 years which have been done. More than half of these species have recorded at least one conservation effort which have come across. The species across various categories have been mentioned here. The list you can see has been given here, and the kind of conservation effort across each species have been mentioned. The next is the pathogen access and benefit sharing system, which is one of the key components of the treaty. Now this treaty talks about negotiations, talking about a more compromised system where wealthier nations resist the obligations, specifically around the PABS norms and technology transfer. So treaty talks about only limited contributions from the pharma companies, 10% of the vaccine production as donation, and another 10% at reduced prices with no binding commitments to be done, right? The next is in the regions of Uttarakhand, we have seen the efforts to conserve the forest groves, now sacred groves as they are considered. The people there have been working as one Amma, that is the mother of the forest, and they have been focusing on preserving the villages and the local areas in the region. They have been walking daily for firewoods and fodder to nearly 7 to 8 kilometers, and there are community run forest management programs which have been functional specifically in the areas of Uttarakhand. And Bhagirathi Devi has been credited the area that they would not tolerate any harm in the forest areas in their area, right? So these are the areas, as you can see, the forest under one panchayat and the forest outside one panchayat, and above the ground what are the status and below the ground what are the status for each of those, we can understand, and the carbon assessment can be done, right? The next is aerosols. Now aerosols are very, very important as to study because they cause air pollution which leads to higher warming. Now over the years we have seen that the temperature has increased by 0.6 degree since 1950s, which is nearly half, and this has been observed in other areas of the hemisphere as well. Now the unusual pattern is because of the dense layer of the aerosol, there are small particles which hang above the country, specifically on the region of Indo-Gangetic Plain. Now they are released through fossil burning, crop residue, and once they are in the sky, they act as small mirrors. Now they absorb the upper atmosphere, reduce the solar radiation which reaches the earth, and lead to the cooling effect on the ground. So these aerosols which are suspended in the upper atmosphere act as tiny mirrors, preventing the sunlight to reach on the earth, but sometimes they can also lead to increased cloud conditions, and they could lead to further complications which can be irresistible, right? So the temperature dynamics is definitely affected by this. The next is these aerosols have been causing significant public health diseases, right? So one of the professors at Harvard Medical School talked about that air pollution is the only one which is responsible for nearly 1.5 million excess death in the country annually, and the same reports have been talking about nearly 2.1 million deaths per year because of higher air pollution leading to higher mortality. Now this diminishes the overall quality of life, the vital functioning of human being. There is higher risk of rising particulate matter and sulfur dioxide which is emitted through the fossil fuels, and then there is a decline which is seen in the hotter months, specifically because of the higher solar radiations which could lead to higher ground ozone formation. Now ozone, if present at the ground level, is a pollutant. It reacts with sunlight, releases nitrogen and VOCs, and therefore it leads to higher air pollution and raises the risk of mortality. So these have been considered as silent killers and affecting the area, right? Now the next is the area in the hilly terrains, and there we have seen gully erosion as one of the major aspects. Again, this has been considered as a combination of natural and human factors. Altered rain patterns have been affecting it with reduced rainfall, affecting the position significantly. Then there has been active gully erosion which has been seen in 51 locations worldwide, of which in India, Morena and Anand Kheda are the two important villages where there have been significant gully erosions which have been reported. The remaining cases of the cities and the towns you can see here. The next is the Tendu tree. Now Tendu tree is known as East Indian ebony tree, and this is also called as green gold because it has a non-timber forest produce, highly important, highly income generating, specifically found in the central India in the deciduous forest, and is known for the tendu leaves which gives you tobacco, right? So there has been a thin shell through which there is a pulp. It takes 1 year to ripe, and then the mature tree can produce nearly 80 to 100 kg of tendu, and this food actually at the harvest cost much lower because it spoils very, very quickly. There are nearly 250 grams of tendu fruits which are being sold for 30 rupees in Bundelkhand. Now if we talk about the tendu, it is rich in calcium, magnesium, potassium, vitamin C, and is known for the various health benefits. Also it is known for antioxidants, phenolic content and flavonoids, high radical scavenging properties which it has. Now compared to other fruits which are the guava, plum, mango, this fruit is also known for various health benefits. It is also a value added product for various preparations which have been seen. So tendu leaves generate a substantial revenue. Only in the regions of Chhattisgarh you can see nearly 950 crores of revenue being generated only by tendu. Tendu leaves are nutritional fodders even known for Ayurveda treatment for mental health diseases. The bark of trees is used for diarrhea. It is used for construction industry. Tendu is also used importantly because it can be grown in the drought tolerant areas and can thrive on a poor soil as well. So very, very good in that terms. The next is pollution market and carbon emissions, which we have covered in a separate lecture. Now Gujarat became the first market to trade particulate matter emissions in Surat, and there has been an overall cap on the total emissions of 318 large coal burning industries which have been considered. The croplands globally have been contaminated with toxic metals, arsenic, cadmium, cobalt, chromium, copper, nickel, beyond the safer limits, and they have been affecting the production significantly. The next is depopulation versus degrowth. Now population issues have been rising significantly. We are avoiding the issues, and there have been smaller families as a model of responsible citizenship, where we are talking about limiting the family size, making it a patriotic decision. But on the other hand, the population has been significantly important, and managing population now has become a very important issue rather than controlling population, right? So there have been remarks talking about the representation of the state, the economic scenario through which the population would be affected, the impact, and the census issues, right? So there have been voices even on the warning that India would turn into an aging population soon, so there would be more dependent population. If depopulation starts to occur and the population size starts to shrink, what would be the impact onto the remaining population? Some other important news talks about, as we focuses on the brick manufacturing units in Uttar Pradesh regions of Mathura, which have led to significant air pollution. The zigzag technology, which is now used with the kilns, reduce the consumption and fuel consumption and improves the efficiency. There has been a new antibiotic which has been brought to treat Gunera, and this would go a long way. The brand name, the drug as the Gepotidacin has been really important to track the UTI infections. Now another initiative talks about the report by UN Spotlight, where 1 degree increase in the temperature is linked to nearly 4.7 degree increase in inmate partner violence. Now this report itself talks about rising social and economic pressures with higher rate of violence against women, girl and children. Also there have been issues of hospitalization which have been seen due to massive sandstorms seen in the region of Iraq, where nearly 1800 people got hospitalized because of the respiratory issues on the dusty days in the sandstorm that were witnessed. Then there have been talks related to snow persistence, the duration the snow remains on the ground after the snowfall. Also there has been focus on the climate tech startups. Now this is one of such startups which have talked about the particulate matter and the amount of particulate matter, the worst conditions being found in the regions of Delhi, Patna, Lucknow and Chandigarh. So that was for today. Thanks for joining in. In case you have any questions or queries, feel free to connect back, and of course the handouts for this would be available for free on Exam Race current affairs section, so don't miss. Thanks for joining in.